So as a lot of you guys may have heard on a variety of potential platforms, I will be having a surgery that will be leaving me gone for an undetermined amount of time, probably 1 to 2 weeks, don't know yet, but I decided to post a Twitter poll asking how much information you guys would want about the situation, since I wanted to make a video announcing that I'll be going away. Not like going away, but like not being able to post or stream or anything. Since the last time I didn't stream on a day I was supposed to without saying anything, people were concerned enough that they were messaging people in my guild and stuff, so I decided maybe I should just let everyone know before going for potentially a couple weeks. But the poll was actually very, very even. It was only one vote off of being a complete tie between enough information to understand the situation and then the entirety of the situation. So I'm basically going to be doing both. I will start off by explaining the basics, and then I will go into very much detail, like a full story time or something, for those who care or are just kind of curious or want to hear me tell a story about a random health problem I've had. But yeah, that's what this is going to be about. So for those that just kind of want to understand what's going on without having to actually listen to the whole thing and the whole situation, basically on September 5th, I will be having a surgery to fix a broken vertebrae in my back that was caused by a previous surgery about 3 years ago. And it's a pretty serious surgery. They're also removing metal bars I had in my back that were supporting my back to make it heal, or to help it heal rather. And they might be adding more bars. So it's a pretty serious thing. I will probably be gone at least a week or two. I might be back and streaming at some point, but I probably won't be making any serious content for a while. Fortunately, 7.3 doesn't really add anything I need to make serious content on, because Ellie isn't changing enough to need a new guide or anything. But yeah, that's the basics of the situation. That's just kind of what's happening. I'm having a serious surgery with my back that could leave me out for a couple weeks starting on September 5th. Unfortunately, that is a Tuesday, so either this coming week or the week before this video is released will be my last raiding week. So I'm just praying that Avatar dies during that time, because otherwise they have to bring in a new range and everything. But yeah, that's a little off topic. So before starting this, I am kind of curious how many people became interested in the full story after hearing the basics, because it is kind of, in my opinion, interesting, the story itself, because it's kind of like, it's not something that you ever really hear about. But I'm going to be telling it from like start to finish. I'm not very good at telling stories, but this is something that's been kind of terrorizing me from the past like 3 or 4 years. So I remember it pretty well, so we'll see how I do, but yeah. So the whole situation is basically a series of events taking place over 4 years about, so it could be a bit long. So prepare yourself for that. I do kind of want to go over everything, because I think it's kind of important to really truly understand the situation I've been in, if you actually want to understand that, of course. So let's go ahead and get into it from start to finish. So it all kind of started when I was in 9th grade. For you European people, that's between the age of 14 and 15-ish. And basically what it all started with was I got really sick, like halfway into the year. Like so sick I was missing up to 3 days a week of school. And even when I was there, I was not really functional. I was just nauseous and dizzy and all that like terrible stuff you don't want to feel. And this lasted months. I ended up going to the doctor for it, and they checked the basic stuff, and they didn't know what was wrong. They kind of didn't seem to believe me in a way. So I just kind of continued what I was doing, did my best to continue passing classes even though I was missing so much. And eventually I kind of developed this bump on my left side. Normally, my anatomy is like my rib cage, between my rib cage and my hips, there's like an indent. At least it used to be, now there's not quite as much. But I was a very small person back then. And then suddenly on my left side, it's sticking out like 2 inches. And it's hard. Not like super hard, but it's like, it doesn't feel like it should feel. So I went back to the doctor, like a month after the first doctor visit because of this. And the first thing they did was an ultrasound and some blood tests and like a urine test, and everything looked okay except for the ultrasound. The ultrasound, they said, showed that I had a malignant tumor, which basically means it's a cancerous tumor that, even if removed, will still probably spread and cause more cancer. And it was basically saying I was probably going to die. Fortunately, I did not actually have cancer. They came back about a week later and told me that I did not have an actual tumor. It was that was not they probably shouldn't have told me that, but they wanted to be sure I knew, just in case it was real. But that was actually not the case, and they wanted to check some other stuff. The doctor did check my spine the first visit a month prior to this, but decided he wanted to check it again just to be sure, because the bump was kind of weird and you never know. He ended up checking the spine, and he was literally so confused and surprised by what he saw that he exclaimed, "Holy cow!" And that was interesting. It's not really something you want to hear from your doctor, and he kind of expressed that as well. He was very, very flustered after that. He kind of sat there, like, composing himself for a moment. And then he said that I had scoliosis, or rapid onset scoliosis, that was probably caused by my spine hitting a growth spurt before my torso had enough room to fit it. He got his x-rays, like, the same day, and I had two 46-degree angles on my spine going in different directions. As in, like, you picture the back, it's like a square. The spine starts in the middle, at like the neck area, and then kind of it went all the way to the right side, 46-degree angle, came back to the middle, then all the way to the left side and back to meet at the bottom. So this is actually where the bump came from. It was like my spine had bent so badly that it was actually pushing things to the side that weren't supposed to be at the side. And even to this day, which is like 3 or 4 years later, I still have this bump on my side. It's not anywhere near as big, it doesn't hurt anymore, but it's still like slightly visible. So that's interesting. I wonder if it'll ever go away. Doesn't really matter. But that was an interesting diagnosis because I literally didn't have anything. My spine was straight enough to be passable as normal literally 1 month prior to this. Within a week, I was talking to a specialist surgeon about options, like what I could do to essentially save my life. He told me that if I did nothing, within 10, 15 years, I may not even be able to walk. I wouldn't be able to lift anything over probably 10 pounds if I was lucky. And there's all kinds of other things that could have happened. I could have even become completely paralyzed just from the spine being so horribly misshapen. If it continued at that rate, I would probably die, or potentially die. It's unlikely it would continue at that rate, or even continue at all, but if the best case scenario is I can't lift anything over 10 pounds, that's not something I wanted to deal with. So he told me the treatment options were either I could put a brace on and wear that for between 8 and 10 years, and it would have a very low chance of actually helping. It was also going to cause a lot of pain and be very obvious and uncomfortable. Or I could just have the surgery, and within a year I should be fully recovered, and the only downside is that I will lose some mobility in my back, as in, like, it's fusing the spine, so I can't really bend it. But I can still bend it at the bottom and top, so I would still be able to, like, bend over when I need to. That was the only downside that was listed on that, other than, like, the obvious surgery risks, but I was willing to take those risks to avoid just being screwed for the rest of my life. And just as a side note, the sickness was probably caused by the spine twisting. Like, if you grab a rope on both ends and you twist your hands in different directions, that was what my spine was kind of doing. And that is most likely what caused the initial sickness in my freshman year, is it was twisting before it actually bent. So the surgery took us a few months to schedule. We ended up doing it in April of 2014, and at this point I was in an independent study program because I could no longer attend school outside of, like, the 1 day a week that's required for that. We had the surgery. I say we because I'm so used to streaming, weirdo. I had the surgery, and there's a lot of things that weren't supposed to happen that happened. For one thing, I got the flu in the ICU, which was very uncomfortable. Would not recommend. Imagine having a pretty serious back surgery, which basically requires them to break a different vertebrae in your back and reshape it, and then fuse it, and put metal bars in there. And imagine throwing up, like, 2 days after that. That was not pleasant. Also, some little interesting things from the hospital. I don't even know what was going on. Like, I actually, for some reason, I believed I was in a dungeon, hanging on the wall, The only light in the room was a red light on the top, like an alarm light, and I thought the nurses were all horses. Except for one nurse. One nurse was a unicorn. And I asked my dad one day, I said, hey, where did the unicorn go? And there was just this profound confusion on his face. I think I actually told the nurses that they were horses at one point, and they didn't seem surprised with that at all. But yeah, that's just some interesting stories from the hospital that I wanted to share. And just to give you an idea of how serious this was, I entered the surgery room, or the operating room, at 5'5", and I left at 5'7", that being height. So I had 2 inches of spine that was extra, so when it straightened out, my body had to get a little taller. I was in the hospital for about 5 days. I came home, and everything looked to be going okay. After a few months, I was still in a lot of pain. I was kind of expected at that point, not like a lot of pain. I was expected to still be in pain, but I didn't realize how much it was going to hurt. But after a year, at that point I was supposed to be able to basically return to normal activities. I was completely incapable of doing anything at that point still. I was still in a lot of pain. And I felt like I was being stabbed constantly under my shoulder blade. I voiced this concern to the surgeon, and they didn't seem to, like, do anything. They didn't seem to, they kind of did, like, x-rays and stuff, but they just kind of said whatever. I continued to come back basically monthly and complain of the same pain. I felt like I was being stabbed under my right shoulder blade. And they continued to basically they did like an x-ray just like as a courtesy. And after a while it was made really obvious that they didn't believe me. Like, they didn't directly say it, but just the way they talked to me was like a condescending, like, you're a drug-seeking teenager, we don't believe you type of tone of voice. But one day, the x-ray actually showed the shadow of something. And the shadow in an x-ray is generally not a good thing. It means that it showed where muscle used to be, where the muscle had been destroyed, or flesh or tissue, whatever it was. So something was supposed to be there and had been pushed out of the way. They ended up investigating further and found that a clip on one of the top bars in my back had broken and released a hook that was traveling across my back. It was behind the ribcage, so they couldn't see it on the x-ray, but it was actually back there stabbing me the whole time. It was back there stabbing me. So I had to get another surgery. This was about 18 months after the original surgery, to remove that and cut the bar down. So after this, I was thinking, oh, my prayers have been answered. Everything is going to progress now. That was probably holding back the healing process. We're good now. It's all going to be okay. The first 3 months, I was healing at a pretty good rate, and then suddenly plateaued. Everything just stopped. No more progression. It all just kind of... We were wiping in phase 1 again. I hate myself. No more progression of the healing. At least the stabbing pain was gone, but there was still a lot of pain in the upper back, and I still couldn't lift much. I still couldn't run or anything. Like, jogging was too painful. I was living like an old man. At least I could, like, still walk properly and walk upstairs and stuff. But I ended up going back and complaining about the pain again, and they gave me that same look of like, oh, you liar. It's like, last time I proved that I was believable, and they're still just, like, looking at me like I'm just, oh, typical teenager, wants his drugs. Typical teenager is just complaining. And that was very annoying. I was kind of persistent. I kept going back, and eventually they told me, oh, well, you can try working on the muscles in your back because they're really weak. So maybe if you get the muscles up, it'll help it heal better. And at this point, it's like, there's a reason the muscles are weak, and that's because it hurts so bad I can't do anything. But I'll give it a shot because I have nothing else to try. So I actually did work on the muscles. I got them nice and strong. I went back and said, it still hurts, and they said, you know what? Let's do a bone scan. So we did a bone scan, and we did the bone scan in February of 2017, and we just kind of didn't hear anything. Like, 2 months went by, and then we got a call. No, like 3 months went by, because it was May. Yeah, so 3 months. We got a call, and they're like, hey, we want to do a follow-up appointment about your bone scan. And we're thinking, oh, it's been 3 months. So it's probably nothing showed. I don't want to do a phone appointment. That's what they were trying to do. I wanted to go in and show him that I had continued working on my back muscles and that they were actually quite strong now. Or they were as strong as I could possibly get them without seriously hurting myself. And I wanted to show him that so he would believe that I was still in pain and actually continue to look for what was causing the pain. So it took us like a full month to get an in-person appointment because they just stopped returning our calls. Like, we didn't hear anything from them for so long, and then suddenly they said, June 20-something is your appointment. Come to the place, the location, and we'll meet you. So we get there, everything seems like a normal appointment, and suddenly the surgeon walks in and says, "Where have you been? I've been trying to contact you." And we were thinking the exact same thing, so we let him finish, and he says, "Your bone scan was positive." And me being the idiot that knows nothing about medical science or anything, I said, "Oh, well that's good, right?" And he kind of looked at me like, "What?" And there was just this moment of silence. And then my dad said, "No, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good." Then he made some example about being HIV positive, and suddenly it hit me that positive in medical terms means that something was there. It doesn't mean it was good. So he then pulls up the bone scan, shows the bone scan to me on the computer, and it's like, you can kind of see a blurry version of all of your bones. Like, they're white, everything else is dark. And then, like, somewhere between 3 and 5 vertebrae down from the top, it's just black. And all the other ones are like a nice tan white, like the type of color you would paint a wall. Because that's the color of all the other bones. And there was just this one that, like, the whole thing was just black. It was like it was missing. There was some outline on it, but the whole middle part was just missing. And he says, "This bone is broken." And that was kind of, like, I still don't know how to even respond to that. I have no idea what to even think about it. Finding out that for, how long had it been? How long has it been? 3.5 years. I've had a broken vertebrae in my back, and I complained about it because I don't think I actually mentioned this, but after, when I was coming back for the pain, I always pointed at that exact spot and said it was bone pain. It felt like bone pain. I said, like, my bones were hurting. And they kind of said, "Oh, there's no reason that should be the case." For some reason, the X-rays didn't show it. I don't know why. I'm not a radiologist, but it didn't show it. I actually looked at the X-rays, so I know they weren't just not looking. But to find out that for all this time, I was right. It was bone pain. It's almost like a good feeling, at the same time as being a, well, shit, man, my back's broken. It was also good in a way because it kind of reassured me that I'm not crazy. Because I'm sure anyone can understand that when you're being told by everyone around you that you shouldn't be in pain and you keep being in pain, you start to wonder if it's just you being weird. Like, oh, maybe I just don't know what it's like to be normal or something. Maybe I forgot. Or, oh, maybe I'm just imagining it. And suddenly you find out it's real. It felt kind of good. But I feel like I've talked about this too long. Basically, that was in June, and they said, there is only really one option here. We need to do another surgery. We need to go in, and we need to put bone growth material on the broken bone, because you can't live with a broken vertebrae for your whole life. That just isn't doable. And while they're in there, they're going to remove the bars they can. If it's not healing immediately, they're going to put, or I guess it's not really about healing quickly. It's more about how intense or extreme the break is. They're going to put more bars back in that one spot only. Because right now I have bars like top to bottom, like titanium rods that are screwed into my spine, which is, if you ever get this, don't look at the X-ray. It's very unnerving. Looking at those giant metal like screws going into your spine, like 4 inches long. Very, very uncomfortable to even think about. But they're going in to fix that. And just in case anyone was wondering, all those times that, I guess not every single one, but most of the time where I would get like a video late or something, and I would be like, oh, something happened. I couldn't do this on time, and I was super vague about it. People would comment and be like, oh, well, what happened? And it's like, I didn't say anything. This is why. It's because the story was way too long to just explain in a comment. The reason is if I'm up much during the day, all my recording I do in the middle of the night. Like right now it's 1 in the morning. If I'm up at all during the day and having to do anything, like even just go like to school or something, I'm in too much pain when I get home to really do anything. I can't really function. Like, sometimes I'll stream, but I don't really have to think much when I'm doing that. But making videos, it's like, you actually have to talk and make a whole lot of sense and continue to do so for a long period of time. So it's not something you can easily do when you're really distracted, so that's kind of the reason for that. Well, there you go. That's basically the story of what I've been dealing with for the past 3.5 years. Maybe I'll get an award or something for having 3 surgeries before the age of 20. Who knows? So far, all I've gotten from them was a water bottle. I mean, it's a nice water bottle, but maybe I could get something a little different. Maybe like a medal or something. Like a trophy. That'd be cool. Like a trophy of a spine. But yeah, I'm just kind of rambling at this point, so that is the full story. So to everyone who watched to the end, thank you very much for listening. I don't really know what else to say other than I'm glad it interested you. I don't know. Or thank you for caring, I guess. Hopefully I won't be gone too long, but at this point, I have no idea. They haven't really told me much about recovery time or anything. If it's anything like the first surgery, it's going to be a while, but it's not quite as extreme because they aren't going to have to re-break anything or anything like that. So I'm assuming just 1 to 2 weeks and I should be okay to start doing some things again. But again, thanks for listening, and I guess I will see you guys whenever I see you. I don't know if I'm uploading anything between now and the time I go, but